Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're located. I am here in Houston, Texas. I want to know below in the comments where you are tuning in from. And today I am trying something out completely new. So if you don't know Stacey Copas, I adore her. And we have been connected here on LinkedIn. I'll share all that in a minute. And she is all the way in Australia. And we were trying to find a time that worked out so that we could stream or that we could do a live, but it just seemed to make more sense if we actually recorded it. And so what I'm going to do today is test out something new where I'm going to stream our session from our recording, so that you can get to meet her. And we're going to talk about resilience in sales. So I'm going to move over to the side. I'm going to hit the play and we're going to watch this recording. And I want to hear, I'll be here in the audience. I want to engage with you guys. We're going to see how this plays out and how well this works for future potential episodes in instances where we just can't get together at a normal time. So I'm going to welcome Stacey as I open up our live. And next time I will know I won't have to open up with the good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because on the recording, because I can do that here. So, testing something new. So bear with the beginning. I might actually fast forward it a bit if I can do that. Otherwise, I'm so super excited to have you spend a few moments with Stacey and I as we dove into resilience in sales as our topic. So let me see how I do this. Let me add that to the stage and let me get that kick started. Well, that we can be anywhere in this world and still be watching the lives all at the same time, which, by the way, it's really cool and applies today even more so because we are here in Houston, or I'm in Houston, Texas. Our guest, Stacey, is where are you located, Stacey?
Sydney, Australia. So the other side of the world from you.
Yeah, look at that. That's so super cool. We're like, 16 hours probably difference in time zone.
Very cool.
Cool.
Somewhere around that. It's day and night apart.
Yes, it is. So I want to welcome everyone for joining us here. Remember to share with us in the comments below where you are located. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time introducing Stacey. I'm super excited that she's here. We all know that the Sellovatorz Live is all about sales, all things related to sales. I'm super excited to have Stacey here with us today. She is an amazing individual. I got to meet her here on LinkedIn, and we talk about LinkedIn and how we build these phenomenal relationships here. Sometimes they are friendships, sometimes they're collaboration efforts, sometimes they're just in the same group. I love Stacey, though. I see us being really friends as we continue down our path. I mean, there's just so much goodness to share about her. I'm not going to spend any time introducing her because I think I'll do her a disservice. So the way I just recently, we talked about, I met her on LinkedIn, but I had an opportunity to even spend some more time with her as I was on her podcast. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out. And so I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity as my community to make sure you met Stacey as well. So Stacey, if you could share with us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing, and then we can dive right into the topic of sales after that.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And yeah, I'm super excited that we get to hang out and jam today because we've sort of been bouncing backwards and forwards on each other's LinkedIn for quite some time now. And we recently got together for the chat for my podcast, Resilience Rock Sales. And that one your episode will be out in probably the next 2 to 3 weeks. So I'll make sure that we pop back and pop underneath. Come back to this live and we can pop the link underneath there when that's ready as well. So, but yeah, I love, particularly as you said with LinkedIn, there's the opportunity to make friends, collaborate, and sometimes it's a combination of the two. And it's definitely been, it's been that way for our connection, and I'm super grateful for that. And I guess I said other side of the world to you, and I'm known for resilience, and more so recently in the sales space. So host of the Resilience Rock Sales podcast. And we're sort of in, what am I up to? I'm up to, I think this week is going to be the 20th episode of that. So, which I'm pretty excited about, because I, everyone sort of says about the stats that most don't make it past 10. And so I'm really excited about that. And that's just been such a gift to be able to get together with incredible people in the sales space and have a chat about not just resilience, but we talk about leadership and sales, and the Resilience Rocks has a little bit of a musical twist that you'll find out at the end of each episode. But yeah, I've just found it to just be such a joy and such a pleasure. And so many of the guests that I've had on have been people that I've met via LinkedIn. So, and the fact that you're doing these lives has been inspiring to me, because I was one of the very early people to get approved for LinkedIn Live, and I have never used it because I was like, I don't know what to do with this. So that's going to give me a little bit of a challenge to get out of the comfort zone for me. But aside from being the host of Resilience Rock Sales podcast, the author of How to Be Resilient, the blueprint for getting results when things don't go to plan, which that kind of just describes sales in a nutshell, and the founder of the Academy of Resilience. And how I sort of come to be involved in resilience, I don't have your typical resilience background, because I think the majority of people that we come across that that speak on resilience, a lot of them are organizational psychologists or academics, but I can sort of proudly say that I am neither of those things, which I thought when I first started doing this, that I wasn't qualified to speak about resilience because I didn't have your traditional qualifications. But I guess what has qualified me is life experience. So I like to say that my approach to resilience is backed by life, rather than a few surveys and a few journal articles. So bit grounded in the real world. So for me, what happened that really led me onto this journey, even though it was a very long time between things happening for me, the biggest challenges in my life, and then getting to speaking about resilience. When I was 12 years old, I had a devastating accident. I broke my neck and drowned in a backyard swimming pool. And that just felt like a death sentence to me at the time, because prior to that, I was a talented athlete, representative runner every distance, soccer, first girl to play soccer at the school, and pitcher in the softball team, academically going great. So, that really, put the brakes on, my plans for life. And obviously many, many years in the darkness after that. But it was eventually after getting my life back on track, and eventually I sought out I knew I needed to do more with my life, and I sought out mentors. And there were a couple of mentors that first of all said, I need to share my story, because with a story like mine and the lessons that I'd learned, that if I didn't share, I was being selfish. And I'm like, it's a hard one to argue with. And there was another mentor who actually put the word resilience to, I guess, my experience in life, and then what I could do to help others. So from that, then I reverse engineered, how did I turn my life around from being told I'd never walk again, going from being that fiercely independent, active young woman to being quadriplegic and dependent on others for everything, to then eventually going out and doing things that most people probably have never done in their lives. And then I finally sort of started to feel a little bit more comfortable with the, I guess, inspirational tag, because, it definitely has had a bad rap, particularly if you're talking about people with disability. It's it's a bit of a swear word in some people's worlds. So I guess that's a little bit of a wrap up of how I came to be where I am now. And May this month is actually 12 years since I left my last job to go out on this journey, and it's an exciting time to be celebrating, and also constantly be learning, iterating, and evolving in what I do as well.
I love that. And I've been taking copious notes here. If you saw me grab my notebook, because there are so many things that we could unpack in kind of how you set the stage for us. And and I don't know where the best way to go. So we're just going to kind of just go with the flow, right? I think that what I think is pretty amazing, and the reason why I am so drawn to Stacey, for those of you that are listening, is that she has this energy about herself. I mean, one could very easily, given, having that you had this great opportunity to be this athlete, right? And then all of a sudden you have this accident, and, you did touch on that you probably had this dark time in your life for a bit of time, but one could have stayed in that dark time. And instead you chose to turn it around. And the energy that you always come to anything that you do is just amazing. And this strength and resilience that you have, right, I just think is equally as amazing. And in sales especially, we need a lot of resilience. I mean, though if you look at the stats, only 90, or excuse me, if you look at the stats, 90% of salespeople fail at what they do, because I think they don't have resilience. I think that that's what they're lacking the most. We know that there are a lot of issues within sales. Sometimes enablement is terrible. Sometimes leadership is terrible. The quotas are too high. There are a lot of reasons why one could fail, but usually it's what is inside of us, or lack of, that causes us to truly fail, right? Because we could find other ways to overcome the challenges that are in front of us by having that resilience. And I think that's what we lack so much of. So it interests me. So I love that we have the opportunity to share your story, but it also interests me in how you put such focus on resilience, because you've had to for so long of your life, right? But that's something that we could take on in every aspect of our life as well, is to learn from how to be resilient.
And it's something that, particularly in sales, because as you said, most people are going to fail. Even in every day, people are going to hear generally more no's than yeses. There's going to, as you said, there's all these different challenges, and sometimes quotas are unrealistic. There's so much uncertainty and so much change just in the marketplace in general. So you've got to be adaptable, and you've got to be able to just constantly be evolving and rolling with that. And that's where it's important. But as you touched on as well, it's not just in sales, it's not just in business. Resilience is important in every aspect of our lives. And what I found interesting over the years is that pretty much every event that I spoke at, and I spoke mainly with leaders in the context of change prior to and at the beginning of the 2020, I would say at least 10% of the questions that I got asked by people afterwards were about, how could I do this with my kids? How can I do this with, some younger staff members in their teams? And so it's something that's super important with being a parent, or just relationships in general, because relationships, whether it's with your spouse, whether it's with a family member, whether it's with your kids, whether it's with your neighbor or your colleagues, there are always challenges there as well, and resilience is super important there. And what I love is that resilience is something that can be learned. It can be taught. It's not something, some people will just go, oh, people are resilient or they're not, but it's something that can be taught. And when it's learned, like the simple rituals and practices that are involved, then when you work on those, they actually benefit all areas of life.
They do. And I think regardless of whether it's sales or not, they'll say the stats are that 90% of sales is mindset, or mind space. I like to use the terminology mind space, but that applies across anything we do. I mean, everything we do, 90% of what we do is mind space. And if you're not in that right place, then you know that success is going to be harder to achieve. If you are in a space where you are resilient, where you have this positive energy, where you are determined and persistent, and all the descriptive words that we could use, right, to describe, you are going to find success more easily, rather than not. And I don't know about you when your dark moments, but I know when I've been at my weakest, negative energy. In those moments, I wasn't resilient. There were so many negative aspects or characteristics that I could use to describe that I wasn't able to close that next deal. I wasn't able to uncover new opportunities and build massive pipeline. When I was in this negative headspace, there wasn't anything about what I was doing that was going to be successful until I decided to change that, right? Until I decided to shift that focus.
And I love that you mentioned that it was a decision, because, for me to get out of thinking that there was no point anymore, that was a decision too. And often people go, oh, it can't be that simple, but it actually is. It is a decision. That's where it starts. Because again, we attract, what we are, who we are, our energy. So if you're in that negative space, then you bring more of that in. So it's very, very difficult to have a positive outcome from a negative space.
Agreed. And when we are driven in sales by quotas and metrics that we have to manage to every single day, if we are not in a positive space, not only are we not going to be successful, but those instances where we have managers breathing down our backs, where you have these metrics that you have to achieve and you're not going to, it just makes things so much more difficult, and it feels like the whole world then is caving in on us, rather than turning that around and being resilient enough to realize that this is just a moment in time. Because look, the reality is, even when we're in positive energy, then crap still happens, right? I was going to use the 4-letter SHIT word, but I forgot that we're on LinkedIn and I can't do that. But, there are moments when, even when we're in positive energy, that stuff's going to happen, but it's how we manage those micro moments so that we don't let that negative moment turn into a negative place in time, right? That extends maybe more than just that moment and into minutes and hours and days and weeks, right? That is what resilience is all about, in my opinion. One have to, like you said, you have to make the choice, and then you got to persevere through even those micro moments that are a bit negative.
And those micro moments happen like all the time. And the thing is, when you do have good reserves of resilience, when you are positive, when you are present, when you've got all of those things going, those little things are just like little blips. It's just like this little blip that you can sort of brush off. Whereas if you are already in that funk, if you're in that, in that negative space, then that same micro issue could then end up being something that just, sends you into a complete spin. And the reality is that those quotas, that manager, all these type of things, they're there regardless of what mind space you're in. So it doesn't, that's not going anywhere. It's not changing anything. So you might as well actually go, well, look, you know what, I'm going to embrace this. I'm going to lean into it. But also too is getting out of your own head and then going, well, okay, again, going back to how can I be of service? That's one of the biggest things is so often when people get into this negative space, then it's all me, 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 me. Whereas when you can actually be in that really, open place of service, resilient, abundant, connected and present, then it's all about everybody else. It's all about that. And the thing is, once you can actually then go, how can I actually help someone else solve their problems? Then often we end up solving our own in the process. And that's one of the things that I love about it. Often when people will ask, oh, look, I'm really stuck. They feel stuck, or they don't know, how to get out of a space they're in. And, it's like, what would you do? I'm like, okay, well, find an opportunity to help someone else. All right. There's lots of things you can do, but I think that's probably one of the most, it's also the most rewarding as well. There's lots of other little things you can do, but they're very, inwardly focusing. But I think if you can start to look outwards, and that makes a difference on that one.
Well, and I think too, I used to say this all the time, and I would always say, I know you're going to think this is really frou-frou-ish, but I really enjoy sales because it's my way of being able to help someone, right? Even when I was selling software sales, even it wasn't something that was, life changing, but most certainly it was helping someone solve to an immediate problem, or it was helping them achieve a goal or initiative, or it was selling them a solution for a project in which they could then become the hero. They could get promoted. They could achieve their KPI so that they could get bonus. Right? There were so many things that I could help. There's so many different ways that I could help them. So for me, I wasn't, I did philanthropic work. Yes, I volunteered, but I loved being able to help people achieve whatever they needed to achieve and still get paid for that. So for me, this was an opportunity to do what I love, which is helping people, and still make a living or an income with it. And I think that in sales today, even more so than any other time, I feel that we have to be shifting our focus to not closing the deal, hitting our quota. Yes, those are all important, but it's really about, how am I helping this person solve a problem? How am I helping them become the hero? And if it's the hero that I'm trying to help them become, how are they going to be a hero? Is it specific metrics that they have to achieve? Are they going to get bonused? Are they going to get a promotion? Those are all key components that we have to, and when you're focused on that, then you get out of that negative mind space, because you're trying to help them. You're helping them win in a way that has you focused on them rather than on you. And I feel like if we as salespeople could shift our mind space, like you mentioned, to focus on helping and serving others, that is half the battle, right? And we're not focused on ourselves, we're focused on someone else. It's just like you said.
Yeah, and as a byproduct, then you're more likely to get get that deal, hit your KPIs, make your quota, get your bonus, and do all that type of stuff. But it just reminds me, going back to, if we're looking at Bob Berg and John Mann with the Go Giver, and it's like, in there it talks about, is something going to make money? And they're like, that's a great question, but it's not the first question to ask. Because again, if you just focus on being of service and helping and being curious, because as you said, like there's a gazillion different ways that you could help somebody, but until you are very present and you actually are, you're present with them and you ask good questions and you are genuinely interested and care about that person, that's when you then uncover all those things. And then that's how you can connect those dots with, what is it, the product or service that you have, and how does it solve those problems? And, when those things come together, because you've listened, and I know it's a big thing for you, is around being curious and the active listening and being audible ready, all of those things that you talk about that I think are just wonderful. And again, if we do all of those things and not be so focused on ourselves, then it's incredible what we can achieve, but also the quality of the relationships that are created in a process like that are incredible as well, rather than, with the other approach, it can be a little bit transactional. And I think if we're looking at creating good relationships with people, then I just think it's more fun too in the process.
It is, because now, especially after the pandemic, right? Before the pandemic, everyone was super crazy busy. We had our friends, we were always in meetings. Sometimes we didn't even want to see our friends because we were going from meeting to meeting, constantly on the go. We very seldom sat at our desks. And so what little time we had, we may not have wanted to hang out with friends, but more so with our family. But now, once the pandemic happened, even though we may be going from meeting to meeting, it's in front of our laptop. So we don't have to rush out of the house or out of our office from our desk and go to the next office room, right? It's everything's done right here. So we still crave those relationships a bit more now than we did previous to the pandemic, because we only get this little bit of time now. We're not as rushed as we were. And so I think it's super important that you build this rapport and credibility with your client, with your buyers, because they need that. They want that. They're craving that. They continue to crave that, maybe on their own terms and a bit differently than, you know, per buyer, but in reality they're craving that, and that's the differentiator. It's the experience that you're creating with them by listening to them, asking questions, you know, managing through a conversation so that you are audible ready, or navigating, not managing, but navigating a conversation, because you are listening, and then you can be audible ready and switch up the conversation if you need to, change the topic if you need to, ask the right questions. I mean, I just think there's so much there that we could do. So if we're thinking about in terms of a person, so let's look at the reality. We had first quarter, we're in the middle of second quarter. You know, last year alone, I think there was a Salesforce.com report that said only 28% of salespeople achieved quota. So we've got 2024. We want to hit our quotas. We're a bit sad because we didn't do so well in a negative mind space, because we didn't do so super well in the first quarter. You know, we're kind of down this path where we're struggling a bit now. We want to have a great year, but things are a little tough. The economy is terrible, recession. You know, I don't know that we've got all the right parameters in place so that we can be successful. So if you're in this place of negative mind space, right? And how do we then turn it around? One of the things you said was we got to start focusing outwardly and not inwardly. So once we've maybe done that, what are some other key things that help build resilience, Stacey? Because you had said it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be innately part of our character. We can learn how to be resilient. So we first got to recognize that we have a problem. I'm Denise and I have a problem. And then the next step is, or one of the most key important factors is to start looking outwardly. But what are some other tips?
Yeah, it's interesting you were sort of mentioning some of those stats too, because I think on top of all of those factors, I think it was one of the Gartner surveys last year that I saw, and I can't remember, it was 89% or 93%. It was one of those two figures. You know, if sellers are reporting feeling burnt out as well. So, you know, you've got all of this sort of stuff, and like people are burning out and not achieving the results as well. So like it's you know, the intersection of those two things, like that is a pretty challenging you know, mind space to be in. So this is where resilience is super important. And also resilience is something that I guess I have a little bit of a different perspective to most, because so often you see resilience and people talk about how do you cope. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's baseline. Like that's like the very, very start of resilience is that coping. For me, it's something that we actually do proactively. It's something that we build the capacity for, and we build the reserves of it so that when we are challenged, then we're not completely blindsided by it. I liken it to, you know, you go to the gym to build and maintain physical strength. And how we do that is we choose the muscle groups that we're going to work on. And they are very simple movements that we do repetitively over time, increasing the load, and then we become stronger. And so compound effect, and resilience is exactly like that. So if we're going to have a look at some of these, you know, again, these simple practices, I like to call them rituals for resilience, because they are things that we do intentionally and we do them on a regular basis, and then we get that resilience. So the two things that I would say are usually the places that I recommend people start. Number one is with gratitude. And most people are going to go, yeah, I know that. Yeah, write down 3 things you're grateful for. Yeah. But I actually tried that myself, and it didn't work for me. Oh. I felt the process felt a bit wanky to me. Mm-hmm. It just felt like an obligation and a chore, and I kind of felt it didn't create an experience of gratitude, because being in a state of gratitude is super important, because it's a state of abundance, of openness, of possibilities, of opportunities, of connection, and being present, and also being able to receive. Yeah. And that's something that's super important in sales as well, because a lot of the time, you know, we're wanting to sort of go and do all these sort of things, but also actually being open to receive the things that come back to us as well, and being able to do those with gratitude. So my approach to gratitude is I actually use a mantra, and I just find mantras are amazing because You can say them out loud. You can say them in your head. You could write them down. You can do all that. And no matter what mind space you are in when you start that, as long as and they help you become present, a few deep breaths to actually become grounded. And then my mantra that I use is, thank you for the opportunity to be who I am, where I am, with what I have at this moment in time. So thank you for the opportunity to be who I am, where I am, with what I have at this moment in time. And that just brings you
what I am, and no, who I am, how I am.
Yeah, so who I am,
what I am,
what I have.
Oh, what I have. Okay. Who I am, what
and
I
where
have,
I am.
and
And
where
where I am.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be who I am, where I am, with what I have at this moment in time. Because it's not about beating yourself up about the past. It's not about getting anxious or stressed about the future. It's like right now. And it creates an experience of gratitude because you're not searching for these things. It's just like, you know what, I'm actually grateful to be, regardless of what the situation is. Like you could have just had like the worst day ever. But if you just sit for a moment and just take a few deep breaths and say, thank you for the opportunity to be who I am, where I am, with what I have at this moment in time. It's a complete energy shift. And then if you smile when you say it, even if, again, you've had the worst day, again, the smile changes the physiology of your body. Like it's super simple, 7 to 9 seconds. So I use that proactively. So when I go to bed of a night, lights out, in my head, thank you for the opportunity to be who I am, where I am, with what I have at this moment in time. A couple of deep breaths. And then that's the program that's running through my night. And then in the morning, the alarm goes off, hit stop, not snooze, never snooze. Boyfriend hit snooze. I don't know. I'm a stop and get moving. And
I'm a snoozer.
oh, it's yeah. It didn't work for me. I'm like, I just set the alarm at the last possible moment that I have to get up, and then I have no choice. And the same thing, use the mantra. And again, it just sets the tone for the day. And then throughout the day, if I do have those moments where you're feeling a bit overwhelmed or stressed or, a little bit stuck or, losing focus, I think that's my biggest one. Sometimes I have those moments where you feel a little bit scattered or a little bit restless. And then that just helps me to just regain my focus. So gratitude, a really big one. And the other one is journaling. And again, a lot of people go, oh, I can't write. I don't know what to write. And so a lot of people just hear journaling and again, dismiss it because it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. And so the challenge that I usually set for people is commit to write one sentence. Just at the end of the day, write one sentence. And I share the prompt with people. Today, I had the opportunity to, and finish the sentence. Because again, there's so many benefits to this. One of them is you get to pull yourself up along the way and go, how, am I being overly negative? Am I focusing on the negative in the day? So if you're actually looking for, the bright spots in the day, because we get what we look for. So if at the end of the day, before we go to bed, we take five minutes, not even that, one sentence you could do in like a minute.
Even one sentence, you could probably do that in less than a minute, really.
You could, but then also being open to that. Sometimes I'll write a sentence. Most of the time I write lots more. I've had some nights where I've written 2,500 words, ended up being a bit of a late night. But when there's things going on, it's great because again, one of the principles of resilience from my book is the impact of language on our experience, because a lot of the time if someone's in a negative mind space, they're going to use very negative language. And what I've discovered is how we describe a situation is how we experience the situation. So straight away, just having that self-awareness through the process of journaling, then you can go, oh, hang on, I'm being a little bit negative there. And what I love too about that process is then you can actually change the story that you tell about something that happened in the day. So you can't change the facts. Things happened, but you can change the story you tell about it. And the sooner you change the story you tell about something particular, especially if it was something challenging, then you're not taking the weight of that with you forward. So journaling, I think, is just super, super powerful. To me, it's my number one non-negotiable ritual for resilience. And come July, it'll be 9 years that I have not missed a night.
Wow.
It's that much. It's that much of a non-negotiable for me.
That's
So
awesome. I actually journal in the mornings, but I used to when I was struggling to be positive when I was coming out of this and on the other side of this journey of healing, I had my notebook where I would write all the positive things that happened during the day so that I could go to bed a bit more positive, right? Because, you start the day and you try to be as positive as possible and then crap happens and then you're like, "Oh, so how am I going to go to bed like this?" And that's when I forced myself to write down because we forget sometimes when you're especially in a negative state, you forget about all the positive things that happen because you're so focused on the negatives, right?
yeah, I agree. And that's another version of it. It's something I also recommend to my clients at times too, because so often we focus on what we didn't do on the to-do list at the end of the day. And so my suggestion to people is actually similar to what you said. You're capturing what were the positive aspects. But I like to recommend, it's like, how about you actually do a what I did list?
Oh,
and yeah, because often when you look at that what I did list, there's usually things that are on that list that weren't on the to-do list that were far more beneficial and a greater experience, maybe moved you forward in relationships. All of these things, there's some wonderful things that end up on that what I did list that weren't on the to-do list. So I'm a big fan of that, because I came across that myself, because I'd get to the end of the day and I'd beat myself up because I didn't do all of this stuff that I'd set out to do in the morning. And obviously you don't want to be completely directionless.
right.
But it's also important to capture those things that did happen that weren't part of the plan as well.
I love that. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you've got to get going, Stacey. So I'd love for you to maybe share some parting thoughts with us and then share with us how we can best find you.
Oh, that would be amazing. Oh my gosh, we could like, as we found last time when we got together, we could talk for hours. So maybe we might have to, we'll have another chat at another time.
Part two.
Definitely. Oh, look, I love talking about these things. So I'm always open to come back and chat again, and likewise on my podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think, look, we've covered a lot of ground here. And I think the big takeaways I'd really love people to take away is recognizing that resilience can be learned. It's such an important part, particularly of sales, but of success in business and life in general. It's a proactive thing, and it's like, needing to dig the well before you're thirsty. So it's finding, it's starting with, I like to get people to start with just what's one thing. So, the gratitude thing might have sounded good for you. It might have been, writing at the end of the day, today I had the opportunity to, just one sentence. I think find one thing that you can do to proactively build your resilience and make a commitment to actually stick with that. I started off with a 90-day non-negotiable with my stuff. And even with that journal, like, I would actually get back out of bed to write, which, being a quadriplegic, is not an easy thing to do, but that's how committed I was to doing that. And now, almost 9 years later, and it makes a massive difference. I think it's, that's made a huge difference in my world. And I would say that I used to joke about it, but now I know it's absolute truth, is that it saved me probably tens of thousands in therapy over the years as well, just by that process every single day of being able to outwardly express, again, the positive things, and also, work through, self-coach in a way through writing was important. And yeah, I would absolutely love to connect with anyone that's here today. LinkedIn is the best place to find me. And obviously you'll have my profiles linked, since I'm on this one with you now. And also too, like, I'd love for you to pop over to Resilience Rock Sales. I think if you've enjoyed this conversation, you're going to love that. Again, Denise is going to be in the next couple of weeks, your episode will be going live, and I'm super excited about that too. And yeah, as far as gratitude goes, super grateful for the opportunity to have come and had this conversation with you and your wonderful audience today.
Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone who joined us. My takeaway today is really just to, if you're in that moment where you're not doing well in sales and you're frustrated, even if you're not proactive yet and you're in this reactive state now trying to get out of, just take a few moments and write down some things that you can acknowledge that you've done really well today, or set your day and create your mantra, or write the things you're thankful for. Whatever it is, find some positivity around, because there is so much goodness out there and we have so many things to be thankful for. So I am thankful, Stacey, that you joined us today. I am thankful for those of you out there who have been listening. I look forward to seeing us back here on Tuesday, next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Central Houston, Texas time. To all of those paying attention and joining us, if you're not on Team Live, let us know you're on Team Replay. Thank you all again. And I wish everyone a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you very much. Yes, so thank you very much for staying tuned with us. I will hopefully have opportunities like this where I can record future sessions, should there just be weeks where I need a break. But more importantly, I'm so glad that you joined us here for the Sellovatorz Live on Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. And this week we had the opportunity to have an amazing conversation with Stacey Copas, who is specifically focused on resilience. And I'm looking forward to having her back on stage with us, whether that's here or in my coffees with Denise, so that we get to know Stacey a bit more. But it takes resilience in sales for us to be successful. And whatever that means, whatever resilience is for you, that is something that we should all together seek out. So if you need help with determining what your resilience is or how to be resilient in sales, reach out to Stacey. Go check out her podcast. And I'm excited to when that podcast episode launches. I love having conversations with her, get to know her, follow her content. Otherwise, come back here next week at 9 a.m. as we have a special guest. I'm super excited, and we'll be talking about Heidi Solomon, and we'll be talking about specifically what it means to have happy salespeople for happy sales, or happy salespeople equal happy customers equal higher revenues and salespeople making their quotas. So I want to thank everyone for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll look forward to seeing you again next week.